of things that you will be interested in, and so you can share your love of matters now. Um, so today we have a very funny show. I started thinking of this show as just a one-off, but the more I looked into the research, I found that there's a lot of these people who are around, and I thought, well, yeah, let's make it a catalog. Let's make it a series that we will eventually go back to, like the rest of the catalogs we have been doing in the Tell Me That Story show. So, hello to Libel, who's already joining us, and we're getting a few other viewers. So, how's everyone doing? How's your week? How have your weeks been?
You're
You're
muted.
muted, Isa. How have you been, Earl? All good? Isa,
Um,
you're muted.
work's been shitty, but it's people just don't know how to communicate. Can't figure out it's just
That is.
common courtesy seems to have just evaporated out of the ether. It's too much flurf, and they just don't. they've invoked the ether. Their brains have
Hello.
just
Yeah, you mentioned
dived
Ether,
out.
and Neo appeared. Hello,
Yeah.
Neo, and hello to Jeff C. Good to have you with us tonight. And we moved the show from yesterday because the creation debate that we had been waiting for actually happened, and we were a little bit disappointed because they didn't go into creation. I was so excited
I
to dive
know. He
into
kept
that.
talking, and I was like, "Where's creation?"
Please give me some Kent Hovind or
Right?
something. And
Yes,
that's
I
what I
was
came for. But the
right.
chat was very pleasant tonight, last night. So
That's true. Yeah,
all
they were
right, we're
mostly
going
behaved.
to. Yeah, everyone behaved. I just had to moderate a very few people. It was very nice. So if you can keep that going, that would be great. So our job is a little bit easier. All right. So without further preamble, we are going to get started. And today's chat can be summarized as powerful people who were also crazy. When I started thinking of this, I didn't think I would come across so many of them. And as I said, in typical Tell Me That Story show fashion, we are starting a catalog, which we will go back and we will continue to add in the future. And today we only have our regular task. Just who would you like to dedicate this chat to? And Libel has got that prediction correct. We are talking today a little bit about George the Third. Give yourself a round of applause, Libel. You got it. So we're going to start with the Whistleback dynasty, which had a bunch of crazy people in their history. Maybe the most famous of them was Ludwig II of Bavaria. But Maximilian, Ludwig's father, had two crazy sisters. Alexandra Whistleback, the princess, believed throughout all her life that at some point she had swallowed, excuse my expression, a full tailed piano. He didn't move, fearful that her insides would move the keys and they would be pressed in our unharmonious sounds. So that's how we get started. She thought she swallowed a full tailed piano. Princess Maria, another aunt to Ludwig II, always used to wear white, so she could see any stains or any speck of dust in her clothing. And the chronicle says that when any ingredient of the world would make its way and be deposited in her pristine white dresses, she would scream in such a terrible way that would scare everyone in the court. The chronicle says Sorry, I went back one paragraph. She would change her clothes 5 times a day. But also, Ludwig II's brother, Otto, was crazy. Ludwig himself, before his own maladies became acute, wrote that his brother used to do terrible gestures. For example, he barked like a dog. He would sit in the dark and refuse to exit his room. And on top of that, he would never take baths and would hear non existent voices that would call out to him. Towards the end, uh, in 1872, the situation got so bad that Ludwig ordered his brother be locked up in the Nymphenburg Palace, away from the prying eyes of the people in the court of Munich. Otto's madness wasn't just a family sadness. If Ludwig, who had more male friends than girlfriends, didn't get any descendants, Otto was the next in line to reign. Otto's conduct deteriorated with the years. After all, he spent most of his time locked up in the Nymphenburg Palace, and it was necessary at some point to pad the walls of his room with mattresses because Otto would bang his head against the wall. Yeah. And that's, I think that's the inception of that image we have of the loony bin with the padded walls. It's very interesting to see. This is the first mention of something like that I've ever seen. So during his most calm moments, he would sit and would play with toys sent by his brother Ludwig and later by the Bavarian government. When Otto ate, he would used to do it with his hands, which is not really a crazy thing to do. It's enough to be just a little piglish to do this, right? Otto spent the final stretch of his life locked up, and his only entertainment was to crush flies against the glass of the windows in his room. Next on the list is Wenceslaus IV of Bohemia, who reigned at the end of the 14th century. When he occupied the throne in 1378, he was 18 years old. Wenceslaus would get lost pretty much everywhere and would start crying like a little kid. I mean, what do you do when you get lost somewhere? We cry. That's obvious. He would take strolls outside the palace, and when he didn't recognize where he would cry and yell to be taken somewhere familiar. He would sometimes go into long periods of silence, and in counterpart to that, he would also go into long, long stretches of prayer during which he would say prayer even while eating. And I can figure out how he would do both activities at the same time, probably failing at both simultaneously. He will also go into love frenzies that would last 6 or 7 days. The passion was so uncontrollable that the women of the palace used to flee when this happened. But also, the pages and the ushers, I'm sorry, and the page boys would do the same. These times of frenzied lust, where libido manifestations didn't have a clear object of desire. Wenceslaus would run through the halls and would love anyone that came across him. Wenceslaus would also go outside the palace and would break into people's houses and assault anyone he could find. And I think I know. I think I know this guy. At one time, he issued an order that his wife Joanna of Bavaria had to become a member of a cheap brothel. And the detail of the brothel being cheap is especially incisive. Like, why would he choose specifically a cheap brothel? That is baffling to me. Um, One time, the chronicle says, in another order of things, a butcher served him a burnt steak. And because, you know, it probably wasn't a butcher. The chronicle said butcher, but it probably wasn't a butcher because butchers give you raw meat. It must have been a cook, a waiter, or whoever. Who knows? He got served a burnt steak and he ordered the person to be burnt. I can imagine him saying, like, oh, this meat is burned, put him in the oven. Wenceslaus was only happy on hunting expeditions, where he would spend long days completely forgotten about his reign, and he would grant honors to his companions while hunting, which managed to garnish the hatred of all the nobles of the kingdom. During his reign, the famous and horrifying pogrom of 1389 during Easter Sunday, in which a priest was leading a procession through the Jewish neighborhood and received a stone thrown at him by a child, which caused the population of Prague to murder 3,000 members of the community. When the survivors requested justice, Wenceslaus declared their punishment was deserved, fined the victims, and requested the corpses of the dead to be hanged. Wenceslaus died in 1419 after a revolt that got him the post. Another wacko. The Portuguese king Alfonso of Braganza, who reigned in the mid 14th century, he would wear 7 suits at the same time, one on top of the other. And we have a statement from an eyewitness. I have it right here. And it reads as follows. The stench of his unwashed body impregnated every layer of clothing. I'm saving this document. It's historical. I got it borrowed from a museum. He would also wear 2 or 3 hats at the same time, covering his extremely greasy hair. What a pig. And to end this portion of the show, we will talk about the king, the English king, George III. And looks like he will go out hunting butterflies naked on St. James Park. And behind him would be hundreds of court people who were trying to catch the king, who was running around naked chasing butterflies. George liked swans and would attempt to seduce them. If they wouldn't come to his callings, he would chase them, hop on top of them, and would hold them underwater for hours until they drowned. In Parliament, he would say pretty much anything that came to his mind. One time, the Prime Minister presented George approval for a crown speech, which was to be pronounced during the opening of Parliament, and King George read it carefully and with tears in his eyes cried, "But what about my swans? This doesn't talk about my swans." So later he had the Prime Minister fix that speech, and in the opening Parliament speech in the year 1762, included a section where it was requested adequate ponds be built for the swans. No one would go near poor George III when he started speaking because he wouldn't stop and he would hold his interlocutor engaged for 10 hours, for example. And it was a terrible offense to leave with no answer the royal conversation. So it was very dangerous to start a conversation with the king. One more piece of data. During his crowning in Westminster, nothing could entertain him. According to the Chronicle, some say that his mind was already drifting away. So it was dangerous starting a conversation. I went back one paragraph, so sorry. His mind was drifting away, and the peak moment of that meeting consisted in the entrance of a horse named the King's Champion, which was the court's best horse. This horse elegantly strode into the chamber, and despite the best efforts of the rider, the horse made its way near the king, and suddenly the horse's tail was pretty much in the king's nose. So finally, the animal deposited almost in the king's plate a bulky testimony of his passing. Among the horror of everyone present, the king, who was really bored, started laughing in such a manner that he suffered a kind of suffocation, and he had to be bled that night. This is the story, the final story that I have prepared for you today for our catalog, a bunch of really, really crazy people. And I think we're good for the insanity tonight. We'll see what Elle has prepared for us. And the problem is when these crazy people have power, because any one of us could be as evil or as crazy as we want. But given the fact that we have no power at all, it's meaningless. But when the crazy person is the King of England, who knows? He might declare war on the Ottoman Empire and we are screwed. So, in typical Tell Me That Story show fashion, I'm going to ask who would you like to dedicate this chat to? But I will jump the gun and I will dedicate this to Sigmund Freud, the father of psychoanalysis, and to Philip Pinel, the father of modern psychiatry, and basically to anyone who at one time or another felt their mind slipping and decided to get help, because mental health is a serious issue and we need to change the perception of those seeking mental health help. So who would like to give their dedication first tonight?
I'm going to dedicate mine to Darwin, because he married his cousin, and that will be yeah.
You know,
For what I'm about to talk about right now, it will be relevant in just a few minutes.
perfect, perfect. Just an interesting fact: in Uruguay, the guy Artigas, our national hero, the guy that commanded our troops to kick the Spanish out in the time of the colonies, he also married his cousin. It's a funny
It's
tidbit.
way more common. I have statistics. It's way more common than you would think it would be.
And Isa, who would you like to dedicate this chat to?
Well, looking at all of these folks, there's a great struggle with mental health wellness um, and disability. I think it's all interconnected. I was in AmeriCorps. It's kind of like a program where you go and serve the underserved and the disenfranchised. It's like Peace Corps, but in the United States. So I was an AmeriCorps member I was a special ed teacher for 2 years, and it was a really difficult experience. And the thing is, who I want to dedicate it to is all the professionals who are working in supporting those with mental health and helping foster a better future, and all those people who are afflicted with mental health. And it's just a tragedy. It's really sad. And making sure that dedication for all of those folks and for a better tomorrow.
Very, very well. Thank you very much, Isa. And I'm going to hand it over to Eikeldero to see what she has brought for us tonight.
All right. So you went through some of the stories of the crazy royals, and I decided to take a different route and to go into a little bit more detail about the issues that happen with royals when they start boinking the sisters. Yeah, one of the most famous ones, and they've done a lot of studies on this family, but King Charles II of Spain, the Spanish Habsburgs. Stop. They were, for hundreds of years, the Habsburgs were one of the most powerful families in all of Europe. The line began in the 13th century and ruled Austria, Spain, and the Holy Roman Empire, which was neither holy nor Roman nor an empire at that point, until the 1900s. Charles was believed to suffer from at least two conditions caused by recessive mutations in different genes. Pituitary hormone deficiency, which can result in infertility, which did, and distal renal tubular acidosis, which can cause kidney failure. The family was particularly known for what is identified as the Habsburg jaw, an oversized jawline and large tongue that made activities such as eating and speaking quite difficult. He was so severely inbred, Charles was, that his inbred quotient, where like they measure the like how close your genes are to each other, it was higher than if his parents had been siblings. So being inbred sort of compounds. It's like it adds to it every time that you do it. It's like it adds a little bit more, a little bit more. And so he was one of the most inbred monarch of all time that we know of, anyway. So he was barely able to eat or speak. He was also known to drool quite a bit. He couldn't walk until he didn't speak until he was 4, and he didn't walk until he was 8. Or I might have that backwards. Anyway, and with great difficulty, he had sort of a hunchback, and he was not very well formed. I have a picture of him. I'm not sure how to share my screen.
You can click present on the bottom. And Laibel called the Habsburg chin while you were speaking. And Jeff C. congratulated Isa on his dedication as well as the rest of us. So,
Woo-hoo.
Very good job, Isa.
Let me see.
I wanted to agree with you.
Might have to do this at the end.
If you have a link for the picture, send it to me in the private chat, and I can share that for you.
I think it's so important what you said, Earl, about this idea that like the incestual stuff, like a lot of these kingdoms did it, and it's really horrible to do this to your children because of this fraudulent idea of purity. That's the point of this, is that there's this fraudulent idea of purity that you're going to do this at the risk of damaging your own children. I think it's kind of disgusting and terrible.
And even when you had families interbreeding, 2 families doing the marriages, you still get like some of that genetic problems arising from not mixing. That's why people kind of mix, so you avoid these genetic problems. And there you go.
Figured it out. So, ugly dude. He was ugly. So the Habsburg jaw, he's got this real defined jawline. They have a really big lower lip, and their nose is very it's pointed downwards and kind of humped. And then they also had some issues with hydrocephaly, which makes your brain kind of look like a little like a light bulb.
Yeah, and libel strikes again. They did an autopsy on Charles and found that he had more water inside his head than brain.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
libel, we're going to have you over for one of these shows. You seem to be quite familiar with a bunch of the stuff we talked to. So
Yeah.
you're invited, libel, for any show that you want to come on, except the Dragons one, where we're going to have John taking back Eden because he was the one that proposed that show. And I will take just a second to let you know that if you want the Tell Me That Story show to cover a specific topic, you can send us a super chat and we will definitely make sure that we make a show for you. So carry on, Earl, please. Sorry for interrupting.
Oh, it's okay. So despite being married twice, the King Charles was not able to procreate. Probably most likely because of his inbreeding, he became sterile essentially. He died in 1700 at the age of 39, leaving behind no heirs and ending the Habsburg dynasty essentially. So it stated that although about 80% of Spanish infants at the time survived childhood, only 50% of the Habsburg children even made it to age 10. And yes, his autopsy report was a staggering read. It states that after his death, Charles had no blood, a heart the size of a peppercorn, corroded lungs, a head full of water, rotten and gangrenous intestines, and only a single testicle that was as black as coal.
Damn.
Yeah. Not getting any presents this year. So while not all of these can be blamed on inbreeding, but all of those are caused by recessive traits. And so this here is what the Habsburgs, their genealogy line looks like. You know, and most people it kind of goes down and then it spreads out and then it spreads out and then it spreads out. This is like a line.
Yeah,
very, very condensed.
It folds on itself like a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. This here, and then these crossing over this way to then marry their. I mean, woof. Talk about sloppy seconds.
What a family.
Lots of sloppy seconds going around. Yeah, one of the women in the line, she was in their genealogy chart like 14 times with different people. It was nuts. Marie Antoinette was actually she was from the Habsburgs, but she managed to avoid most, although she was a little cuckoo, but she avoided most of the other issues. So moving on to Ferdinand.
Wait, one second. Before you move on, Marie Antoinette was the one that had
the big hair.
The flying squadron that she had a group of girls that would go out and sleep with guys and get them to tell them their secrets after a night of passion making. Yeah, I remember that.
She wanted all the dirt.
Yeah. Flying Squadron.
She was addicted to gossip.
That name was awesome. Go on, please. Sorry.
The let them eat cake. Although she never actually said that.
It's a tribute.
So Ferdinand the First of Austria was born in 1793 to double first cousins, Emperor Franz II and Marie Therese or Teresa. Ferdinand was born with hydrocephaly. That was so he's another part of the Habsburg line. He's just a little bit further down. So that causes pressure on the brain and can lead to brain damage, obviously. He also had the Habsburg jaw and epilepsy. And despite his feebleness, because he was a very frail person, the king insisted on him being the heir to the throne, his father, to continue the royal bloodline and, monarchies, blah, blah, blah. But because of his disabilities, he didn't really directly control matters of the state. He was under the mastery of counselors and regents and stuff, so it was sort of a puppet monarchy. And during his reign, one of his favorite activities was to sit down in the on the open end of a waste paper basket and roll around on the floor. So like sit with your butt in the basket and roll around.
I mean, compared to some of the things we saw today, that's
Yeah.
tame, but it's pretty
It's
crazy.
pretty tame, But surprisingly, he held the throne for a full 18 years, abdicating to his nephew in 1848, and he died at the age of 82. So he was mostly just kind of Looney Tunes. He didn't have as many health issues. So let's see here. Where am I? Lost my place.
That happens to me. It's annoying.
Oh, so that was after Charles. Now we're going before Charles because I rearranged and screwed up.
And
but anyway,
given
it's
that
okay.
we're in the future, we can travel time freely
Right.
when looking at these things. Yes.
So there was Joanna of Castile, the older sister of Catherine of Aragon, and she was from the house.
Joanna the Crazy. We
Yes.
call her Joana la Loca. Juana la Loca, we call her in Spanish. Yes.
Yes. So from the house of Trasmara, which had been engaging in cousin marriages for centuries. So her parents, King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella, they were second cousins. And the family's long tradition of inbreeding, it was thought that that's why Catherine couldn't get pregnant. So obviously this is sort of a running theme, is that your bits don't work. So then she married into the Habsburg line. And as a child, she was known to be intelligent and inquisitive, but very moody. And she, at 16, she entered into an arranged marriage with the son of the Holy Roman Empire, which was, again, neither holy nor Roman, no really emperor, and to Philip the Handsome. So himself also the product of inbreeding. But he was known for being a philanderer, and but Joanna was obsessed with him, so she just sort of, oh yeah, you're boinking somebody else, but she just sort of did this maneuver. So when she ascended the throne, her older siblings like kind of suddenly died, and it was like that she had a full breakdown. And then because Philip was philandering, and then she was like, it was too obvious because he was a dick. And so she had like a full on just mental break, like a break from reality. Poor thing. I can relate. And when she found one of his mistresses, her husband's mistresses, she stabbed her in the face.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah.
Damn.
Right.
Stabbing someone in the face requires a special kind of grudge. Like, you don't stab someone in the face just because. Yeah, that's specifically malicious.
But then in a weird twist, so when her husband, Philip, died suddenly, she held onto his corpse and slept next to him for weeks.
Oh, yeah.
Even
Like,
after he was philandering on her and, you know, stabbies and all that business, like she was still obsessed with him and so sleeping next to his corpse.
like one of the loves of the caliphs, I think it was the first one, Yazid, that he would weep, and he embalmed the body of the who was it, Hababa, that died, and he would weep over the embalmed body of the dead girl. That was crazy.
Yuck. Yeah.
Yeah, I got
Have you dissected anything before?
Yes. And I've seen
The
corpses.
texture.
I've been to the morgue. Yes,
Yeah.
that's
The texture of you know, tissues that have been sitting around in formaldehyde is something else. Chicks love rigor mortis. Moving on. So much of European royalty in the 19th and 20th centuries could be traced back to Queen Victoria in some way or another. So that's so we're moving on from the Habsburgs, and now we're on to this dynasty. Her daughter, Princess Alice, was the mother of the Tsarina Alexandra Romanov, the last Tsarina of Russia that all got, you know, and grandmother of the last Viceroy of India and great grandmother of the Duke of Edinburgh of today. So Victoria's genes went all over Europe, but the problem with Victoria's genes was that she had hemophilia. Which she passed to her children and their children and all of that. And it went throughout European royalty because she had so many babies and they all married around and you know, then they produced babies and so it became kind of a problem around that time. She didn't suffer significantly from the disease herself, but one of her children and 5 of her grandchildren died from complications from it. Hemophilia is caused by if you know both parents obviously have to have the recessive gene for it. And Queen Victoria's was a very unique subtype known as hemophilia B. I won't get into the nitty gritties of it, but anyway, it just made it more complicated. So there have been speculations have been raised as to whether Edward, the Duke of Kent, was actually her biological father.
This is like a TV show drama, like a soap opera drama.
Right, because they were trying to figure out, because both parents have to have the gene, and so they just through probabilities and stuff, like it wasn't really adding up. So Prince Albert and Victoria, Prince Albert was her husband, had to both have hemophilia for it to be passed on to their children. And so for such a rare recessive disease to be so strongly present among cousins, there's a speculation that the queen herself may have been the product of inbreeding. She wasn't thought to be, but they think that her dad
may have done something around lurking about. Yes, right. We know a little bit about that.
Yeah, some naughties. So let's see here. So Queen Victoria, her daughter, Princess Alice, ends up being the mother of the Tsarina Romanov. So we're doing that. So then Alexei Romanov, the grandson of Queen Victoria, inherited the hemophilia, and he had it really bad, and he would have frequent bouts of bleeding that were life-threatening, and that's when his mother, Alexandra, sought help from Rasputin. So it's thought that this inbreeding actually kind of started, you know, all the conspiracy theories that kind of all run together. Because Rasputin came in as this sort of mythical, he was a a snake oil salesman essentially, but he was kind of in the occult or whatever. And for some reason, evidently this man stunk to high heaven, but women loved him. And he was always whoring around with somebody. And there was a lot of naughty scandal about whether the Tsarina was boinking him and stuff. And so there was all this like naughty rumors in court and everything. It's quite scandalous. And he had quite a bit of influence in the court because she was so obsessed with him that even when he behaved badly, she was always sticking up for him and stuff. And so he could, like essentially do no wrong. Even when he fucked up, it was, they were still like, oh, it's fine.
Yeah, as it happens
yeah.
in these cases.
So there were several times when Rasputin actually saved Alexei from his bleeding and stuff. They're not entirely, because the people that were trying to save him, the actual like medical experts, were trying to give him aspirin, which doesn't work if you're a hemophiliac. So he was having them stop doing the aspirin thing that was legitimately killing him, and doing some other something that isn't quite understood, but the not aspirin thing was probably a good start. So but he was credited with saving the son, her son's life, like repeatedly. I think it was like 4 or 5 times. And so that, but let's see, where am I? Oh, right. So Rasputin, he got so notorious that the Russian people started to like not take the Romanovs seriously, and they think that was like part of the revolt. So that's how like the hemophilia, like, because he was brought in to save her son, and then she was so smitten with him that kept him around, and then he was like helping to fudge policy and stuff and sort of get what he wanted to get done through her. And so then they're thinking that that's kind of how the Russian Revolution began.
Well, I would say they were deeply anti-Semitic too. The Romanov dynasty was deeply anti-Semitic as well. So a lot of people in this revolt were Jewish people because they were so deep. They did these things called pogroms where they did horrible things to Jewish people. They were really awful. The Romanov family, it's like when I saw Anastasia, it made me really sick because my family fled from Russia like in the late 1800s, early 1900s because of this. So that's why actually my mom's family is in America, is because of this, terrible, Romanov family. So
right.
Yeah, and I mentioned one of the pogroms too. Very, very nasty stuff.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
And of course they all get, moited, which was, kind of, it was really awful how it happened too. They, put them all down in the basement, and then they just sort of shot them, but then a lot of them missed. And Alexei actually, they put the
Oh, no, what happened? Looks like we lost Earl. This is a conspiracy. The Russians don't want her to continue her story. Oh, there you go. You're back.
It was started doing the twirly twirlies. I was like, no, wait, where did I go? Yeah, they put the jewels inside of his jacket, and it stopped the bullets, and so they didn't know that he was alive. And then they ended up like they caught him, and which was he was a little kid, so that kind of sucks. But yeah, they were not a great family, and they weren't ruling all that well. It was the czar thing was starting to go downhill at that point anyway, and he was just a very ineffective ruler. But so you were talking about George III, who is also a descendant of Queen Victoria. They were part of the House of Hanover, and George III obviously lost the American Revolution, and known as the Mad King. And he was believed to have suffered from a condition known as porphyria.
Porphyria.
It's a genetic condition that causes bouts of insanity, essentially. And then he was also known to be suffering from blue urine.
Damn.
So that was the original theory. And then they kind of reassessed and thought that maybe it was because he had bipolar disorder, which various mental illnesses are including depression and schizophrenia and other things that have a real strong genetic link are all tied in with inbreeding. So they think that the stuff that he was whatever he was being given from his doctors was causing his urine to turn blue, but it was a whole thing. But during his manic states, he would write, and evidently it was like another person was writing it, like his penmanship would completely change, and he would speak so fast that he would froth at the mouth and be drooling. He was, I can't relate. Yeah, he lost the American Revolution, and that was not his best moment. So the last one, I think it is, is because these were sort of European. So went with King Tut, obviously, is another one that was known to be quite inbred. Although they have the beautiful masks and stuff, he was written as being very thin and sickly. He had a club foot, and he had a really pointy jaw, and his belly was sort of distended. And I think he married his sister. They were known for marrying their sisters, the brothers and the sisters. Like Akhenaten had to marry his sister.
Akhenaten, yeah.
Yeah. And let's see, what else?
While you search for that, give me one second. Our good friend Christ Brings a Sword is in the side chat and has been throwing out some insults and saying that nobody cares. You are free to leave anytime, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
No one is forcing you to be here. We have our fun with our audience. We are not forcing you. Just go away.
Well, Max, we need to hear the story about the Jonah. We need to hear the story of Jonah, remember? That's the prophecy about the world is coming to an end. That is the most important story of the day.
I'm going to give you a little tidbit. We are working on a countdown to the 40 days after the eclipse to the end of the world. And we are planning an end of the world stream. So stay tuned for that.
Woohoo! So he had a club foot. He had his limbs were really skinny, and he had a cleft palate. So he was, and evidently Cleopatra was not as gorgeous as they once thought she was, which I just don't want to believe it.
No, she was beautiful.
I'm not going to take that away from anybody.
Revisionist history. Cleopatra was beautiful, and there's one time where she gave fellatio to 100 men in a row. So her jaw must have unhinged like a snake. And she delivered herself. She rolled herself inside of a rug and delivered herself to what's his face, the general. I mean, she could have been the ugliest bitch of the kingdom, but if you roll yourself in a rug and you deliver yourself to me, it's like, all right, where do I start?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, right. Pop out of the. It would have been really cool though if they had made like a little gift box, and but the rug's pretty cool too.
Have you heard about her vibrator?
I have not.
Oh, yeah. There's a legend that says that Cleopatra used to put live bees inside of a jar and would use that as a vibrator. Like,
That's kind of
That's
amazing.
she's great.
amazing.
She's amazing.
Sounds dangerous though.
I will never look at a bee the same way again. That is amazing. The Egyptians invented braces. I thought that.
Yeah,
The
I've heard
coolest
you
thing.
say that, but it
Yeah.
was backstage. So if you want to touch on that briefly, because we're almost
Yeah,
at the end of the
I'm
show.
almost done. Yeah, that they have mummies with braces where they've actually wrapped the teeth in gold wire and straightened them out. They were very the Egyptians were highly known for their beautification practices and bathing rituals and that kind of stuff. They were thousands of years before their time.
Label says use hornets, they're bigger
Those
than
great
bees.
big murder
Thank
hornets.
you. Thank you for that. That was awesome.
Well done.
Label, MVP of the audience tonight. She gave us
For sure.
some pretty amazing stuff.
Subversion. So to conclude, just a few current stats.
All right.
It's inbreeding, consanguinity.
Consanguinity.
Thank you. That one is actually quite common today around the world. Large portions of the populations of Asia and Africa, where those marriages account for approximately 20 to 50% of all marriages in those areas, mostly like South India and Pakistan, and then several areas in Africa have very high rates of incestuous relations.
And you may not know it. You may find like the girl down the street, and she may be distantly related to you. That's
I'm getting to that part. Yeah.
Okay.
It's as in South India, it's as common as 54 or 55% of all marriages, and in Pakistan, it's 77% of marriages are between second cousins or closer. Current data indicate that 10.4% of the global population are related as second cousins or closer. 10%. Damn.
That's a lot.
That's a lot, yeah. First cousins have 1.5 to 3% increased risk of having a child with inherited birth defects above the general population. And first cousins, once removed, have an increased risk of 0.75 to 1.5. And second cousins have no higher risk than a genetically unrelated couple. I didn't know that. So that's my spiel.
All right. Thank you very much. Any thoughts on all of this? Isa, give us your detailed insights. You're muted.
Got it. Wow, there's a lot here. I think the biggest takeaway is just kind of like the element of abuse, the power of abuse, the abuse of power, the abuse of kind of the abuse of fraudulent purity, the abuse on populations. All of this stuff seems to be this kind of theme that runs throughout this space, throughout this gamut, and a lot of people suffered. A lot of innocent people suffered from this, and just kind of a tragedy that you see all these children that are born with these situations that could have been avoided, but it's this lie and this myth of purity. That's why they keep intermarrying, folks. Is because they keep, I guess the quote unquote word is inbreeding, is because they keep saying that this family is better than everybody else. and it's just a false narrative, and it's a really sad, it's a tragedy that all of these children had to suffer. A lot of them died because the parents did what I would say is abuse. It was an abusive
Mm.
situation.
And I still have here Earl's image. I'm going to share it right now. I wonder in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, in 7 generations,
Mm.
which is many, many years, how long it took them to decipher, yeah, maybe we're just creating monsters and we're not being more pure,
Yeah.
we're being worse and worse. I wonder what happened through their
And
head. Sorry,
and it's
I cut
oh,
you
no,
off
please,
there,
we're
Isa.
collaborating. I think
Well, I just wanted to say the yeah, that's this is another one of the queens. This is a queen of Spain, of the same Habsburgs. Big um, chin and all of that. And then there was another one, where
Quite
so
a
it's like
catch.
it's a prominent feature. Um, there's another one. When they're all that fugly, like
Damn.
you'd think that they would start hoping to expand the gene pool just a touch, so that they weren't so homely looking. But
well, and I think it's very
Isa,
clear.
yeah.
Oh, it's fine. Yeah, it's clear. Like someone in the chat said, well, they may have not known. Well, I think it's very clear that you can tell after several generations of these traits coming and other people not having it. It's pretty clear that there's some kind of problems going on, um, and it's just Europe had a lot of problems. Europe has had a lot of
They
problems,
did.
and it's very
Um,
funny when I hear people tell me how great Europe is. I go and study, you go into school and they tell you how great the European history is, and I'm like, I just see disaster. I see massive problems, massive trauma, massive issues. But they tell me how great, pure, and awesome and wonderful Europe is, and we're brought to this age because of Europe. And then we see all of these kings and queens, and I'm like, is that right? Is that real? That's all I have to say. I kind of just dropped the mic on that one.
for the second part of this show, I already have prepared. I found a couple of crazy kings from Baghdad who were also like pretty crazy, and we're going to see in that show, which we don't know when it's going to happen. I just have the info there to prepare the chat, but they were just as crazy as everyone else, and it's funny, and I know that you like to sometimes move away a little bit from the Europe centric stories, but I have a treat for you, Isa. You asked for it, and we are getting it over to you. So, Christ brings a sword says, watch what happens in the next few days and weeks. Right now, America is suffering record-breaking storm, just as in Jonah. And second part of
I'm
that
looking at
message,
the weather, and it just doesn't seem to be that, like, I don't see any record-breaking storms. Like,
Well,
second part of that message is the East Coast is continuing to be hammered by storms. The Central America is hot and the West Coast is freezing with snow and rain.
climate change. That's
Yeah.
probably something you don't really believe in, though, right? But
it's
maybe
in the
that's what it is. It's
60s.
not mythological. It's actually things called climate change because we keep putting out pollution and doing really
It's
terrible things.
48 and sunny in Seattle. That never happens.
And I just think it's funny.
No joke. I'm looking at it right now. Like,
All of these issues, if there are problems with the environment, it's because we humans created these problems. And I think it's bizarre that this story of Jonah keeps coming up. It's obviously a spiritual, metaphorical, allegorical tale that talks about a person who doesn't follow the rules and has to go on this spiritual journey to understand, or has a call to action, is afraid to come to follow that call of action, and then realizes that the call to action is actually not as bad as he thinks it is. That's the story. That's the arc. It has nothing to do with any of this stuff about weather or climate or anything.
yeah.
So I'm just like, I don't get it. When the person brought up that story last time, I'm like, buddy, I don't think you understand the story, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
And
it's
today
exactly
it was
for
gorgeous.
this reason we don't ban you, sir.
Yeah.
Because you you give us something.
Well, we need
What were you
rationality and
saying, girl?
logic.
I cut you off. I'm sorry. What were you saying, girl? I cut you off. I'm sorry.
Me? Oh, I was the weather thing was just weird. It's like I can look that up. Like I would have heard. I pay attention to such things. Record-breaking storms. What the fuck?
All right, we have a couple
There
of
you go.
messages and we are going to wrap it up for tonight. This was a great, funny show. Thank you, Earl, for preparing such a detailed chat. It turned out good because I prepared a little bit less than I do usually, so I could let you just have at it
I'm a
and
long-winded bitch.
yes. But it was awesome. Thank you so much for your first actual chat
Yeah.
in the Tell Me
Third
That
one I've
Story
written and the
show.
first one I've actually said.
Everyone, let's give Earl a virtual round of applause. So, a couple of messages from the audience. Pedro, talking about the guy that would go into the waste paper basket. A great life connoisseur, nothing like rolling on your butt. We kind of agree. Libel, which has been throwing us excellent data all night long, says Queen Elizabeth I was the daughter of King Henry VIII, who will probably make an appearance when we next talk about crazy people because he killed a bunch of wives. And that makes them first cousin 14 times removed. Jeff C., if I remember correctly, the Habsburgs wanted to maintain pure blood. Yep,
Yes.
and they were failing at it really, really hard.
Mhm.
Prince Philip, Libel goes again. Prince Philip was asked if he was looking forward to the visit to Moscow, and he replied, no, the bastard murdered half my family. And finally, the other message I wanted to highlight before we go is Christ brings a sword, asks Isa, what happened at the end of the book of Jonah? And Isa, have at it.
But yeah, I think I've already confirmed basically what the whole story is about. The archetypal, it's just a story about Jonah going and going on this journey and then going to Nineveh. And I don't think there's anything that was missed. It says the last verse of the book says, the Lord said, you pity the plant for which you did not labor, nor did you make it grow, which came into being in a night and perished in a night. And why should I not pity Nineveh, the great city, which are more than 120,000 persons who do not know their right from their left? I think that this is, I don't see what the point is of what Christ is saying. Christ brings a sword. I think it's just a very strange reading of this text. And this is my point. I hate to say this, but a lot of Christians who are of European ancestry read these Jewish texts like they're Christian European stories. They're not. They're Jewish stories. So read them like Jewish stories. Don't read them like it's your culture and your heritage. Not only is it that,
or worse, they read them
years
as though they're U.S. centric, as
correct.
though
Oh, yeah.
100%.
that's exactly what he's doing. The whole U.S. looks like a whale or whatever bullshit. It's like he actually
You're
thinks
completely right, Earl.
that the United States has anything to do with anything in the Bible because they had no idea we existed. Like,
And these are ancient Jewish peoples from thousands of years ago.
yeah.
Even modern day Jews don't even have like a direct connection because they've been influenced by all the cultures through the thousands of years. You have to try to understand it from that context, from that time. Like even first century Jews, where we see the story of the New Testament, they wouldn't have understood Jonah because Jonah was so far before them. Jonah was kind of like an idea. So how far gone they were from Jonah, how far gone are we from the first century Jews? The culture has changed so much, and it's so bizarre. You're completely right, Earl. It's American centric, and they're trying to make these stories American, and they're not.
They're not.
They're ancient Jewish
Objectively
stories.
not.
They're ancient Jewish stories.
They're trying to ad hoc the signs of every time there's an eclipse the wackos come out in droves. It's
Yeah,
I want to
must
address
be
what
some.
LaBelle said too. LaBelle made a point about the Garden of Eden.
Wait, no,
Oh,
we're
oh,
going to save that one. I'm going
oh.
to save that one for another time because I just thought of something we might do with this at a later date. So, Libel, thank you very much. I'm demanding you come on the show sometime, Libel. So get ready, and whenever you feel like it, you are more than welcome to join. Just send me a quick message, put a comment on a video, or contact us some way. But I have this question saved and we will get to it eventually. Let me do some housekeeping and I will let you folks go on and have dinner, have the rest of the night free. Thank you for being here with us. Today was a wonderful show. We had plenty of laughs. And Isa, with his final reflection, made me a little bit sad that I was laughing all the way through when saying these things. But that's kind of the spirit of the show. We can laugh about these things. And that's mainly how I process a lot of the wrong in this world. I try to find a reason to laugh about it.
you see
Tomorrow,
that
5
Three
p.m.
Stooges. I want to go like this and boink. Boink.
Thank you, Christ with a sword. But you know, a hate view is still a view. So thank you for supporting the show.
We'll take it.
Uh, Tomorrow, 5 p.m., Oz is going to do a new episode of Reschooling Flat Earthers, his new series that has been going every day, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And on Saturday, the 9th, 5 p.m., Deep Six, I Killed Earl, and Justin are doing the Deep Six show with Deep Drinks. And that show is absolutely wonderful. So if you have a chance, remember to like, subscribe, and when you subscribe, click the subscribe button again and enable all notifications so you don't lose any of the content that we've been doing and working hard to give you our best effort for very serious stuff like debates, after shows, pre-shows, and also a bit more lighthearted stuff like the Tell Me That Story show and the Deep Six show, which are perfect amalgamations of humor and deeper meaning, serious thought, and it's great that we get these spaces to just hang out, be ourselves, make a few jokes, and still address a few important topics that are happening in the world. And later this month, on the 23rd, I'm sorry, at 4 p.m., we are having, which graciously Earl managed to get, Aaron Ra. And we're all very proud of Earl for managing to get Aaron Ra on board to the Deep Six show. Again, that will be on March 23rd at 4 p.m. So if you haven't, like, share, subscribe. We're so close to get 10,000 viewers. We want to make a party with you, make a celebration stream, or something fun is going to happen if we get to 10,000 followers. So share it with your grandma, share it with your couple, share it with your neighbors, scream it out on the street, subscribe to Matters Now. That would be the only kind of crazy preaching this show would approve.
That's all the proselytizing that you're allowed.
Yeah, exactly. That's the kind of preaching that we support. Any final message before we close it out? Isa, Earl, thank you so much for sharing this space with me. It's absolutely wonderful to have you here.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. Glad to see everybody. Christ brings a sword.
Pleasure.
Thank you, sir.
It was a pleasure.
All right. And with that, we'll let you go.
Thanks for coming.
We'll let you go on with the rest of your day. Thank you to everyone in the audience who joined for this show. And we'll wrap it up right now.